Have you ever wondered why the older we get, the lonelier we feel? Even in the very home we've spent a lifetime building. There are afternoons when you sit by the window, quietly watching the cars drift by. Your children, your grandchildren, they're still around. And yet somehow, you've become someone who stands silently behind the scenes of their lives. You help, you give, you ask for nothing in return. But still, there's an emptiness inside, a quiet ache with no name. What is it that turns a father, a mother, once the rock of the family, into a silent caretaker in their own home? And is there a way to continue being a loving parent without losing yourself in the process? If you've ever touched that feeling, we invite you to leave a comment below, a number, a few words, a quiet reflection, just so we know you're here, still present, still listening. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because each week we share gentle, healing stories made just for you, our cherished elder friend, as you walk through these most dignified years of your life. Every Monday morning, Eleanor rises before the sun. She lights the stove, warms up yesterday's soup, and quietly folds her grandson's clothes for school. The clock on the wall ticks in slow, steady beats, echoing the soft shuffle of her footsteps through a house that once rang with laughter, now filled only with the echoes of routine. It's been 3 years since she last returned to the library where she once volunteered. Not a single morning coffee with old friends, not one new book bought just for herself. The days are full of things to do, and yet somehow she no longer sees herself in any of them. Sometimes when she looks out into the garden, where golden chrysanthemums once bloomed under her care, Eleanor finds herself letting out a quiet sigh. No one ever asked her to sacrifice, but somehow, it just happened. Have you ever felt that way too? That life, though still moving forward, somehow no longer feels like your own? Thomas, 74 years old, was once a skilled carpenter, a man whose hands touched wood like an artist carving time itself. Now those same hands most often hold a baby bottle. For nearly 2 years, he's been caring for his grandchild full-time so his daughter can work. He doesn't complain, no one asked him to, but every morning, as he wipes down the dining table, picks up scattered toys and rocks the baby to sleep, he feels himself slowly fading from the story of his own life. His neighbor and old friend named Jack used to invite him fishing every week. Thomas turned him down the first time because he was busy, the second time because he felt awkward, and the next because maybe we don't have much to talk about anymore. Eventually, Jack stopped asking. He once belonged to the local woodworkers guild, showcased his handmade pieces at community fairs, mentored young apprentices. Now he mostly moves between a small kitchen, a pot of vegetable stew, and the soft shuffle of diapers. No one sees the quiet afternoons when, as the baby naps, Thomas sits by the window, gazing at an old photograph of himself standing proudly in his wood shop, eyes lit with passion, and lets out a long, quiet sigh. I still love my daughter, my grandchild, but I'm starting to lose sight of who I am. That's what he once whispered to an old friend over the phone. This is not a rare story. So many older friends like Thomas have given so much, so silently, that they've slipped out of their own calendar and into someone else's. And you, dear listener, have you ever felt yourself slowly disappearing, too? One October afternoon, as the pale end of season sunlight spilled softly across the porch, Thomas sat at the dining table, the same table often scattered with his grandchild's toys. In his hands was an old leather-bound notebook, its corners worn and frayed. The one where he used to sketch designs for chairs and tables, back when he still worked with wood. The last page was dated 2019. After that, only blankness. He stared at it for a long time, not reading, just looking, as if he were gazing at a part of himself, a version of who he once was, now lying silent among the dust of forgotten memories. And then, for the first time in a long while, he exhaled a few words, simple, yet quietly profound. I've given so much that I forgot to keep even a little for myself. It wasn't bitterness, nor regret, just a quiet realization, gentle but unmistakable, that even love, without boundaries, can slowly make someone disappear. The very next morning, he woke earlier than usual. Instead of turning on the stove, he quietly made his way to the shed and pulled out a half-finished wooden chair he hadn't touched in over 3 years. It was covered in dust, but the grains still felt smooth, like something once deeply cherished, waiting to be remembered. He placed his hand on the wood, as if touching his own heart, and whispered, "I'm still here." It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't a rejection of his role as a grandfather or as a father. It was a return, a gentle reclaiming of self, a reminder to his soul that, even in these later years, you still have the right to live, not just exist for someone else. From that day on, every early morning, before his grandchild woke, Thomas gave himself exactly 30 minutes. He didn't do anything grand. He simply sat by his old wooden table, sanding a small block of wood or sketching a few quiet lines in the notebook from years ago. No one told him to do it. No one asked why. But little by little, he began to feel himself come back to life, right there in the familiar space he had always called home. I don't need to disappear in order to be loved. I just need to be present as myself and still love in the right way. Dear cherished elder friend, sometimes to hold on to who you are. You don't need to go far or change anything big. Just give yourself one weekend morning, not to babysit, not to cook, not to clean, but to do something that reminds you of who you were before you became a parent, a grandparent, or someone always on call. Maybe it's writing a letter to your younger self. Maybe it's calling an old friend, or simply playing your favorite music and sitting quietly with a warm cup of tea. A life of value isn't measured by how many people you help. It's in how much of yourself you're still able to hold on to, completely, lovingly, and fully. Dear cherished elder friend, perhaps you've spent your whole life living for others, set aside countless little dreams just to keep your family safe and warm, given away every meal, every embrace, every year, not for recognition, but simply to see peace in the eyes of those you love. But please don't forget this. You don't have to disappear in order to keep a home together. You don't have to sacrifice your entire life just to prove your love. True love still exists, even when you choose to save a bit of time for yourself. Even when you say, "Today I won't cook because I have a date with myself." If there's one small thing you can do after watching this video, let it be this. Write your name, just once, right in the middle of next week's calendar. Not in your children's schedule, not for a family gathering, but for a quiet appointment with yourself. To do something you once loved, once missed, once left behind. Because your life is still unfolding, and you deserve to live every remaining day, not just as a mother, a father, but as you. If you see yourself somewhere in this story, we invite you to leave a comment below. Just a number, a short note, or even a quiet "I'm still here." That's enough to let us know you are being heard. And if you found this video meaningful, please feel free to share it with someone you love, especially those caring for their aging parents, so they might understand. Love doesn't mean holding on too tightly. It means honoring the space where each of us is still allowed to live. We'll see you in the next video, where each story is a small, gentle doorway leading us home to where true peace begins. A life message growing older is not the final chapter, but a sacred pause, a precious moment to look back on the path you've walked with all that you've given, all that you've lived, and all that you've loved. If there's one thing to do today, let it be this. Forgive yourself, embrace a joy you once knew, and offer yourself the same gentleness you've spent a lifetime giving to others. Peace does not come from doing more. It comes from knowing, deep within, that you are already enough, already beautiful, and still so deeply worth living for.